I'm dazed and confused.
Hey, music fans, welcome back to Sound Lab Studios. We have a very special guest on our channel today. We have Jacob Martin here. Jacob, would you like to introduce your channel for us real quick?
Yes. Thank you for one, Garrett, for inviting me on your channel for the first time. Over on my channel, which is literally the same as my name, Jacob Martin. I primarily do movie reviews over on my channel. I'm more of a movie guy than anything else, but I do enjoy music as well. I listen to music on the side, and I'm starting to cover music on my channel. I recently had Ryan from his channel Worst Reviews. We did a discussion on Queen, and I had
Queen's a
Adam
good
from What the
band.
Gym and Jason the Old Millennial for a discussion on Chris Stapleton. So
Mm.
I'm it's exciting to be on your channel, Garrett, to talk about Led Zeppelin, and I'm excited to dive into their discography over here.
Mm-hmm. I know he may have taken a little break, but he's going through the Aerosmith albums right now.
Oh yes, I'm excited about that one.
So walk this way over to Jacob's channel and subscribe because you don't want to miss a thing. All right.
Read on.
If you clicked on this video, you probably know that we're going to be reviewing Led Zeppelin's debut from 1969. Looks like Briar has his CD there. Nick's got one there too.
Yes.
I have a triple album set
Triple album set.
with live stuff and other things. It's actually quite good. I got this for like 20 something bucks at the time. It's a nice listen. Has Moby Dick on it.
I think that's less than I paid for this copy here. But
Isn't it original?
yeah, this is from 1969.
And I'm the odd man out. I listen to it on Spotify.
That is okay. That is a perfectly reasonable way to listen to this album.
Yep.
There is nothing wrong with there was no digital trickery added on the remaster of this album. Some albums you got to kind of listen to the record because in remaster they changed some things, but
Yeah. This is remastered, so but still
well,
it still plays good though. Like I was just going over in your channel when you were showing your record collection off that anything that's sourced not that's not analog is most of the time like really bad, but this actually plays really well, and even going back to it sounds pretty good.
well, I think Jimmy Page was the one who remastered those reissues, so I don't think he's gonna let anything crappy get reissued.
Yeah, I have all their records besides, well, I have In Through the Outdoor remastered, but I do have an original copy of In Through the Outdoor, so
Do you have
both
presents?
sound really good. So
Do you
yeah.
have presents?
I do. Because I was going through I need to collect every Led Zeppelin album phase, and I'm a completionist, so
I
yeah.
am a completionist with certain bands, but I think that's one album I will not be buying just because it wasn't very
If
good.
even
But
it's even it since it's your second favorite
I'm
band, though,
I'm I'm putting the cart before the horse. We need to get back to the first album here. So a little background information. Who are Led Zeppelin? Well, in the 1960s, there was a band called the Yardbirds, which famously featured Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck. And this other guitar player named Jimmy Page, who all of his bandmates up and quit on him, I believe. And
yep.
he needed to get a new touring band for the Yardbirds, I think like 68 tour or something like that. He wanted to get a super group together with Steve Marriott of the Small Faces and some other really big like rock stars in the 60s, but he couldn't get them all, so he had to go with unknowns Robert Plant, John Bonham, and John Paul Jones. Now, one day he was hanging out with his friends John Entwistle and Keith Moon of The Who, told him about his new band, and Keith Moon famously said, "Oh, that'll go down like a lead balloon." So when asked what the name of the band was, he said, "Our name of our band is Lead Balloon," which the producer didn't think that would sell very well, so it was changed to Led Zeppelin, which is a giant blimp or a balloon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this album generated a lot of controversy, specifically because of the image on the front, which is of the actual Hindenburg crashing down. This was kind of a big departure from anything people had heard before, other than maybe like the Jimi Hendrix Experience. The goal of this album was to take American blues music and put a British spin on it. So, you guys have any general thoughts on the album before we begin?
Yeah, what's crazy too about it is that Jimmy Page was just a session musician, and the way that he just became an unknown session musician to be a band member of the Yardbirds after Jeff Lynne, not Jeff Lynne,
Yellow.
Take Two, Jeff Beck leaves the band, and the way that he does everything, and the fact that it was going to be a super group if it would have won out, the way everything just turned out, and the way that because originally Cream at first was kind of like that, where they took like blues and with Eric Clapton, because Eric Clapton was a huge blues fan, so Cream kind of started it, but then Led Zeppelin sort of perfected it, if that makes any sense.
I think Clapton was kind of the first guy who went into big improvised long guitar solos.
Yeah.
Kind of the first guitar hero out there.
Good way of putting it. Cream walked so Led Zeppelin could run.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I'm going to preface this now by saying that this was the first time I had listened to this album. I'm not like a diehard Zeppelin fan. I know some of the big songs and anything like that, but it was interesting listening to their debut album for the first time, because I thought it was an interesting experiment. I think they were trying to go with the classic blues sound while also going very heavy metal, psychedelic almost with the approach. And I don't know if it fully resonated with me personally. I thought it was too clashing of tones together, but it was still an interesting album, and there were still some cool songs on it nonetheless.
Here's the good news: is by the second album, since it's in the late 60s and the early 70s, the psychedelic kind of goes away and it kind of gets to more just blues-based rock.
Yeah, and that's the kind of sound I prefer, because I'm familiar with like the Whole Lot of Love, Immigrant Song type Led Zeppelin. Like, this album was a little weird for me personally.
Yeah. And it's really cool to hear opinions of people who have heard like this album for the first time, kind of get just an honest opinion without any bias of like people like, "Oh, what, you don't like this album?" Like, I think it's really good that we're getting like this full honest opinion, and something that I would really like to capture on this video. So really glad that you haven't heard it before. It's gonna make for a good review.
Yeah.
You have someone who hasn't listened to it before, such as him, and you have me who's been listening to it since I've been a freshman in high school. So you have like someone who's been listening to it for years and someone who just first heard it. So it's like great contrast in opinions and all that. So very excited for the review.
Briar, you got any thoughts?
I mean, you guys pretty much summed it up. I mean, I like when Jacob mentioned about the heavy metal part, because when people talk about Led Zeppelin, they usually talk about like they're like one of the forefathers of what is considered heavy metal music. And there's even on this album, you can definitely hear where many bands took inspiration from, and so they just take it into a even more heavier direction. So it really is cool to actually hear like this really is a part of history and more heavy music. So I've been listening to Led Zeppelin for ever since I got into music. So of course they're one of the first bands your parents recommend to you when you want to get into music. So yeah, so I've been with this catalog for a long time. So it was nice to finally go back and re-listen to a lot of these albums, because I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a diehard Led Zeppelin fan, but I've always enjoyed them. So it's always nice to always revisit those bands that I probably haven't listened to in a long time, but kind of get fresh ears for it again.
I was gonna say something, but then I forgot. Oh well, let's get into the track by track.
Yep.
All right. The first song on this album is Good Times, Bad Times.
Oh man, good times, bad times.
What do we want to say about this song?
My very first Led Zeppelin song I've ever heard. My dad was like, "Let's listen to some Led Zeppelin," and I'm like, "Who are they?"
The perfect introduction.
This was back when I was just into the Beatles, and the only thing I was listening to was the Beatles. And my dad's like, "Well, listen to this," and it was like, Good Times, Bad Times, and I was just blown away. And I'm like, "What?" I was like, it was just like.
Oh, I remembered what I was going to say. I wouldn't exactly call Led Zeppelin heavy metal. Like, definitely an influence on heavy metal later, but I feel like Robert Plant has too good of a voice for it to be considered heavy metal. Like heavy metal is usually, I would think of like the. Oh my gosh, that was too much. But, like that kind of
something like that. But other than that, but there's trust me, that's the more extreme
I
side.
feel more like
that.
Ozzy Osbourne would have been a better. Like
Metallica is metal. They're actually pretty good.
Yeah, Metallica, Iron Maiden, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's good metal. But like black metal, heavy metal, that's all rubbish. Good times,
bad times.
What a great song. It's just a really great way to start off your career. People like say, what would you consider to be the best way to open up an album? For me, like thoughts come to mind, like mine, like I Saw Her Standing There by the Beatles. This song is a perfect example of opening a career perfectly. Keep Yourself Alive by Queen. Like those songs usually come to mind when I think of like just perfect ways to like showcase your music, like very first song. So yeah, I can't. There's not really a whole lot.
Sorry. So I was just gonna say, because I think about what's great about this song is that every member gets a moment to shine a little bit to really showcase what they're capable of. Like you start off with the bum bum, with John Bonham's drums, like his like throughout this whole album, like Bonham's like drum sound is very different from everything before this. It's big, it's heavy, it's loud. And then Page comes in with the guitar riff, and even John Paul Jones gets a chance to shine with his bass fills. And of course, you showcase Robert Plant's vocals. So, yeah, like Nick's been saying, like this is a great way to really start off a career.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add from what you guys have already said, but I will say I think as an outsider listening this song kind of felt like the outlier compared to all the other songs on the album, because the other songs were a lot heavier, and this one felt like I'd say the most radio friendly of all the bunch. And then come to find out, I looked it up, this was the one released as a single. I think the only one, and I can see this being a radio hit. Definitely feels like a Beatles-esque, Rolling Stones type song almost. And I don't know if I'd put it in the same caliber compared to those other bands, but I thought it was a solid little track that definitely, I guess, set the stage for the. I don't know about the rest of the album. I guess this is like the warm up, and the rest is like the heavy hitters. But I thought it was a decent track.
For me,
yeah. I was gonna say, ironically, this was like it was released as a single, but it only got to 80 on the charts.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, for me, this is the best first song on a first album. Like up there with like More Than a Feeling by Boston, kind of good. I can imagine if it's 1969, like the heaviest hitting song you've heard is either like Jimi Hendrix or Helter Skelter by the Beatles, and then
or even like a Cream song from back then too,
or like the Rolling Stones, and then your friend is like, let's get this new Led Zeppelin album, and you put it on, and you drop the needle, and then that bow 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 bow, and then the John Bonham, like the drums on this song are insane. John Bonham is doing like triplets on the bass drum with his foot. That's insane. The guitar, I love the guitar solo on this one. Insane. And then like Robert Plant is just going all out on the vocals on this one. So probably one of my favorite songs on the album. And like Jacob was saying, it's a perfect way to kind of kick off the album, kind of warm me up for what's about to come.
Nice.
All right. If there is nothing else we'd like to say, then let's move on to track 2. Babe, I'm gonna leave you.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, this is
Right
another
away,
good one.
this is easily the best song on the album, bar none. I hate to spoil it right away, but I have a coworker who we drive in to and from jobs. It's like an hour away, and we've been listening to Led Zeppelin, and he got me back into this song. He's like, oh, this is one of my favorites, and he plays this song, and I'm like, yeah, this is a lot better than I remember, because I wasn't crazy about it when I first heard it. I'm like, oh, it's acoustic. What is this? They're trying to be the Beatles. Yeah, those are like way back then, but of course I grew to love it more, and now it's my favorite song on the album. Just the acoustic beginning, and then it just goes rocking hard, and the way it just progresses, and Robert Plant's vocals is perfect. Just everything. It's just a perfect song, and I couldn't ask for a better follow up to a great opener. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Funny enough, this is not my favorite song on the album. I do agree with what
Really?
Nick said, that it's a perfect song, but it is not the best song on the album. I'm not to spoil anything, but I don't even think it's the second or third best song on the album. But that's just my opinion.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, funny enough, I didn't have this one high on my ranking on the album. I didn't hate the song by any means, but it didn't really stand out to me either. The folksy production I thought was kind of interesting. The only other time I can think of Zeppelin doing that later on was Ramble On, which I think is an amazing song. But
Oh,
I
yeah.
can look at that,
Love
whatever
that
album
one.
that was from. But
Let's some Led Zeppelin too. So
that's on the next one. Okay, I'm
yeah,
looking forward to that.
released
Then.
only a few months later.
Okay. But thank you for that. But I wonder if this might have been the warm up to that song. But I don't know. This song didn't really stand out to me that much. I liked the heavy hitting side on the second half when like the drums started to kick in.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I was starting to vibe with it a little bit, but I think because it clashed so sonically, it was hard for me to get into the song compared to what Nick was saying. But I, I think it's okay. I guess I'm not like I wasn't particularly blown away by it.
All right. Yeah, I guess for me, I think I kind of more agree with Nick on this one. This is probably one of my favorite songs on this album, and for a lot of the same reasons Nick was going. I For me, I really enjoy the different dynamics of the song. Like you have the more slow, that more acoustic side, but then out of nowhere, it just kicks you with the drums come in. And I think Robert Plant vocals on here is very well done as well. Another one of his big standouts vocally here for me. Yeah, and I already mentioned the switch ups, but yeah, this is another one of my favorite songs. Not gonna say where, but it's pretty high for me. So I thought this was a good song, good follow up song to the first one. And this was the first cover. I should probably point out this was the first
Oh
cover on
yeah.
this album so far. So this was originally by someone named Anne Breeden, who was kind of a blues song. And funny enough, Joan Baez actually did a cover of this before this song came out. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, just want to throw that out there. But
Yeah,
to me,
I
yeah,
think I
good
should
song.
probably go ahead and preface this, but Led Zeppelin were a nobody band, and so they thought, in order to get more famous, we should do some cover songs, but like change it to where, like, basically just take the lyrics or a melody and make our own song out of it. And nowadays, that would get you copyrighted. So
And we'll
now,
get to one of those in a
a
bit.
lot of their early stuff nowadays has the correct credits on it to the original writers, but back then it was credited to Page and Plant,
Yeah.
and they got a lot of lawsuits because of that. However, I will say, even though stealing other people's work isn't exactly right, I will say that Zeppelin probably bettered whatever the original artist did. But
Yep. Uh, Yeah, it's crazy what they did on
Also, I don't want you guys to think that I hate this song because it still is one of my favorites on the album. There's just too many really good ones for it to be the top song on the album for me.
That's fair. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course, I was going over with Briar when we were reviewing our Birds album that like what's the purpose of making a video with more than one person if we're all just gonna be like, yeah, this is great, my favorite, and we're like, oh yeah, we agree and all that.
Yeah. You want to know
It's
something that I bet we all agree on?
what?
Track 3, You Shook Me, is not a great song.
Yeah, it's very
Yeah.
boring. It's very I don't know. Every time it comes on, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get into it this time. This is gonna be the time. This is gonna be the time this song clicks for me. And then I'm just like, okay. And then
Yeah,
and then
this one.
and then
Yeah, this one's
I'm just,
definitely
it's
dragged
so
out a bit too long.
one thing it's too long and two what just like come on, just Dazed and Confused. Let's go, you know?
Oh.
So the placement on the album, it couldn't be any worser, to be honest.
Well,
Like it should have been the first two songs and then Dazed and Confused and then that boring song after.
I'm gonna be. I guess I'm in the minority on it, but I really enjoyed the song.
Really?
Well, I actually,
Okay.
I was really vibing to this song. I read it was a cover. I think Muddy Waters
Yeah.
did it originally.
Yes, that's
Blues
correct.
Legend. I've not heard the original, so I can't compare. But I really loved Robert Plant's vocals on this song. He was really singing his soul on this song. I was
Mm.
quite impressed with that, and I didn't realize until I think I might have gotten my songs mixed up. If I'm not mistaken, this is the one he plays the harmonica on.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's it.
And I loved his harmonica skills on the track. And I thought that was a major standout. I didn't know he did that.
Well,
And
you better
even
get
though
ready.
it goes on a little too long, it's like 6 minutes and something. I'm like, and again, kind of like my overall like personal preferences. I kind of lost my train of thought, but my personal, not really that big on the heavy metal stuff, and I felt like there's like a clash in genres almost on this album. I admired what they try to do on this song, where they try to do the blues type sound with the psychedelic stuff, and I thought it was kind of interesting how they did it on this one, even though it goes on a little too long.
I think that Jacob, that you're really gonna like the song "Bring It On Home" on the second album, which it has more Robert Plant playing the harmonica on it, but it's a lot
Okay.
more epic.
That's a whole lot better.
Boo doo 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 doo, boo doo 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 doo.
Not that, but it's not super long either.
Yeah.
It's epic, and it's like kind of short at the same time.
Yeah, this one honestly not my favorite, but I will say there are two things I like about this song. One, the part where Jimmy Page is copying everything Robert Plant does with his vocals at the end of the song, and B, it has a really cool lead in into Dazed and Confused.
Yep, that's pretty much what I had wrote down as well. Like, yeah, the whole call and response with Jimmy and Robert. Yeah, that was probably the biggest highlight of that song for me. I thought that I'm always a sucker when bands and when singers and guitars do that sort of thing. I'm a sucker for that. So yeah, that was a highlight. But overall, I kind of agree with Nick and Garrett. It's not my favorite song on the album, but there's some decent moments on it. It's just a tad too long.
All right. This next one. Wow. Dazed and Confused.
It's a really bad song. It's too loud.
Trippy hippie.
Nah, I'm gonna be honest now. This song is amazing. This is the second Led Zeppelin song I heard. Yeah. So from Good Times to Bad Times to Dazed and Confused, I got banger after banger. So yeah, this is like one of the few bands I could say I love most of the hits of and will never get tired of, besides like two or three. But I'll get into it when I get into it. But it's not
More sticks.
I'm talking about hits, not like just album tracks. But this song is just so epic. This song was originally with the Yardbirds. They recorded it with Keith Relf, the lead singer of the Yardbirds. I heard versions of it, but I'm like, it's great, it's amazing. But Keith Relf, I to be honest, controversial opinion coming up. I prefer him as a lead vocalist over Robert Plant. I know that's crazy,
What?
but this is like one of the few cases where I'm like, you know what, Robert Plant does it a lot better than Keith Relf does.
Okay.
So yes, controversial opinion. But
Okay, so what's cool about this song is that there's this epic section in the middle where Jimmy Page is playing the guitar with a violin bow. Yeah, that's right. And he on stage, he would get his guitar, his Telecaster that was given to him by Jeff Beck before he left the Yardbirds. He would pull out a violin bow that would sometimes be glow in the dark, and he would play that guitar with a dragon painted on it with the violin bow.
wow, that's
Epic.
cool.
Yeah.
But this is kind of more what Jacob was describing as like the psychedelic blues song. And John Paul Jones is really the star of this one with his descending bass line.
Mm-hmm. Yep. As the certified bass player in this group here, then yeah, I mean this is definitely one of the most well-known bass lines. I mean it's not that hard either. It's very simple. Again, like Garrett says, it's just descending down the neck. But it's just so recognizable. Like the second you hear it, you know what song you're going to, and that's what I always look forward to, especially when you get to that fast section. I mean, you can still hear John Paul on the bass still going at it. So yeah, that's a great song. And of course, this I should also mention. I always got to bring up some fun facts here, but of course, this was inspired by somebody named Jake Holmes, and of course, this song's pretty infamous because it was one of the songs that they got sued for in 2010. Luckily, that case was dismissed, but yeah, that was a different time. But yeah, this was another big highlight for me. So yeah, this is a great one. It's a classic.
Yeah. This was one of two Led Zeppelin songs I had heard prior to listening to this album. I've heard on some classic rock stations a time or two. And I've always been in the camp where I respect it, but it's not top tier Zeppelin. However, based on this album, I would say this is the standout track on the album because of all the tracks, this is the song that feels the most, I guess, Led Zeppelin like. It's very experimental. It's definitely one of their heaviest songs. It's very psychedelic. And even though it's not my preferred style of subgenre, I think there's some really cool sounds in the production, especially in the instrumental bridge. I love Robert Plant's vocals on the song, and there's some really good guitar work. I would say this is probably the biggest standout track on the album for sure.
Funny you say that, but once we get into like albums like Houses of the Holy and Physical Graffiti, it's gonna start sounding less and less like Led Zeppelin with those two albums, and especially Enter the Outdoor, like they start really experimenting with their sound.
By then, you can't really pin them down to one sound. It's like that kind of like you have no idea what you're gonna hear whenever you play it.
Yeah. Garrett said it perfectly. People like to think of them as blues, hard rock musicians, but they're really mostly studio innovators, which very represents the band perfectly. Their albums always sound different from one another. Like each of their albums don't really sound samey. That's just me that I say that part with their albums don't really sound the same.
And I kind of feel like John Paul Jones is kind of like the secret sauce in the band that makes it all really mesh it really well because he knows exactly what to put in with the bass, and then he plays so many instruments on these albums, not just the bass. Like he'll throw in like some keyboards in later albums. Like if you ever heard the song Kashmir and you hear what sounds kind of like a full orchestra, he's playing all that on a Mellotron, which is really cool.
Yeah, he's very underrated. I was watching the Led Zeppelin 4 review and it was like, oh, John Bonham, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, and the other guy. And I'm like, no. Paul Jones. I'm like,
those keyboards and the recorder on Stairway to Heaven, that was all him. Misty Mountain Hop, that iconic electric piano intro was John Paul Jones. Like, Your Time Is Gonna Come is the first song on side 2.
Oh man. You know what's crazy is I had another coworker have a radio station, and that song played. I think I mentioned you that one time,
Did it
Garrett.
play Black Mountainside afterward?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I had those two songs, and I'm like, wow, like radio stations never do that. And I told him like, this is a good radio station. He's like, yeah, they play like a lot of like radio hits, but they also go with deep cuts sometimes. And what a that organs like so like I feel like I'm going into church with the organs, and then it just gets, and then it goes into the music, and I'm just like, man, this is such a good song, and this song definitely grew on me, and man, I love this track.
It's
Yeah.
good. It's not one of my favorites on the album. I think this one is kind of lower mid level for me on this album.
Fair enough.
Nothing too interesting lyrically going on either. It's just like you've been unfaithful, but someone's going to be unfaithful to you. That's about it.
Yeah, it's not really that lyrically, like it's not lyrically the best, but musically, this is coming from a diehard Led Zeppelin fan. I love this track to death. It's really good.
Yeah, I am a sucker for these. Okay, if you've been unfaithful, unkind to me, well, life's gonna mess you up as well if you keep doing what you're doing. And this I thought was kind of a banger of a track. I thought it has a really great intro, and then when it dives into the vocals, I thought it was actually really good. I thought it had a really great hook. Your time is gonna come. The harmonies on the track are pretty good, and I thought it segued into the next track very seamlessly, the Black Mountain Slide, which we'll talk about next. I thought it was another, in my opinion, one of the more memorable tracks on the album.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is one of those songs I kind of forgot how much I liked. I really enjoy the organ playing on this track. And the chorus is pretty catchy as well. Like the whole how they're singing that one is pretty memorable. I could kind of see this one being a single, but they decided not to, which yeah. But yeah, it's a very pleasant song. It's kind of in the middle, but it's still a pretty good song. I very much enjoyed this one.
Yeah, again, like not trying to hate on this song. It's just when there's so many absolute bangers on this album, something's got to be lower tier.
Yeah, right.
If there was a lot of crappy songs on this album, this would have been my favorite song. But you got like Dazed and Confused, Good Times, Bad Times, Baby, I'm Gonna Leave You. Like way too many really good songs.
That's fair. That's totally fair.
Yeah, it's not my least favorite, and it's not my second to least favorite either. It's probably my third to least favorite, but only because there's so many epic songs on here.
Yeah, of course.
And talking about good transitions.
Oh man, the transition with the and you can still hear the vocals a little, and it just goes right into it. And the crazy thing is, I think this was inspired by a Yardbird song from their last album, Little Games. It's called White Summer, and it's very similar to it. With the guitar and stuff like that, but it's not as psychedelic. It's just kind of like simple. But this track, it's just brilliant. It sounds like something that like the Beatles. It sounds like something that George Harrison would do for the Beatles. I don't know why, but every time I think about this song, I think about Within You, Without You, or like a different like.
Oh yeah, because of the Indian percussion.
Yeah, like I wouldn't be surprised if Jimmy Page was influenced from like the Sergeant Pepper track Within You, Without You, and it's such a great instrumental. I'll tell you if it's a top 5 track or not. I'm not going to spoil that though.
And this is the first song on a Led Zeppelin album to use an alternate tuning for the guitar. I know Page kind of like to play around with those alternate tunings, so he's playing in what's called Dadgad tuning, which is famously later used on the song Kashmir.
I think it's pretty much established already that I'm not too huge on instrumental tracks. I like vocals and all that, and there's very few exceptions where I'll really enjoy the instrumental stuff. And this is kind of again one of those where I don't really see myself going back to very often. I mean, it's fine. I think the acoustic playing is cool, but again, like I said, this is not really a song I will go back to on its own.
I actually agree with Briar on this. I'm not a big instrumental guy, especially listening to it isolated. Like if I'm listening to it on the album, it's fine. Like I like how it segued from the last song. It transitioned very well. But if I want to hear a song from Led Zeppelin, the band, like I want to hear Robert Plant singing. So it
Fair
has some
enough.
good. It has some good. I like the acoustics on the track. Like it sounds nice, but just on that alone, if probably like my least favorite on the album, just because I'm not gonna go back and revisit it on its own.
Yeah, you won't like Moby Dick then from Led Zeppelin 2 then, because
But
that's an
it's
instrumental
so
track.
cool. And Bonham is like, well, here's the thing about Moby Dick on my copy, because I have the 1969 copy that was not mastered by Robert Ludwig, the one that they nerfed superiorly, or severely. On my copy, John Bonham sounds like he's playing the bongos because of how badly it was mastered. So I need to either let's go ahead and spend the money on the Robert Ludwig one or get like there's a 1977 reissue that apparently sounds really good. But I don't want to hear what sounds like John Bonham playing the bongos when it's supposed to be an epic drum solo. Like my roommate and I, we were listening to it, and Whole Lot of Love sounded amazing on it. But then we get to Moby Dick, and he's like, "Is he playing a bongo solo?" And I'm like, "No, that's supposed to be a drum solo. What's going on? Why does it sound like he's playing the bongos?"
That's a
And
shame.
anyway, fun fact about my Led Zeppelin 2 record I got recently. I'm still glad I have that though. It's cool to have that album in the collection.
Yeah, it's a good record. Like, hey, you want to hear a record, you want to hear a version of Moby Dick where John Bonham sounds like he's playing the bongos? No? Well,
Whole,
here we go.
Whole Lot of Love and Heartbreaker sounded good though, and that's mainly what I bought it for, is to hear like how cool those ones sounded on record. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to the album. Oh boy, Communication Breakdown.
This was this is another one of the first Led Zeppelin songs I heard. I remember hearing those two songs I was mentioned before. Then I listened to a whole lot of Love, the Immigrant Song, and then this song came on, and I was just like, "Doo, doo, 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 doo," and I'm like, whoa, we're getting into some excitement now, and I really like this song. And I'm excited for that battle we're going to be doing eventually. You're going to be
Oh yeah.
with my generation
A
because both.
little plug coming up. Gonna be going up two of the greatest hard rock bands of all time, Led Zeppelin versus The Who. 10 song battles, 10 different categories. We're gonna be duking it out to see who gets the title for best hard rock band of all time. So
Well, if you ask me what I think who's the best band of the two, you already know
I
my.
think you already answered it in the question. Who's the best band according to Nick?
Yeah, who's clearly the best, but subject.
As a disinterested, non-biased person who likes both of them, I'm going to be doing 10 song battles, and whoever's watching the stream at that point will get to be the judges and get to vote on who they think is the better one on each of the songs. But
Yeah, I saw the track listing already, and I'm sorry, but I picked all the Who. But I'm hoping some people disagree, or hopefully I get disagreements because it'd be weird if it's all unanimous.
yeah,
the Who, the Who, the Who, the Who, the Who.
the hardest one is going to be the last battle, Stairway to Heaven versus Won't Get Fooled Again. I had to do like my favorite from each of the, or not my favorite is the Rain song, but I just
Yeah,
picked like
the
probably
song is
their most well known songs.
that's fair.
Yeah,
Um.
that's
Anyway,
gonna be hard though. Those are two absolute banger songs.
yeah.
Yeah.
I let me go ahead and I'll just do a little side tangent here, and I'll go ahead and tell you guys the list of the battles.
Okay.
Communication breakdown.
Communication breakdown. I'll get to my thoughts on communication breakdown soon.
It's just an R-rated track. It's too loud. It comes in out of nowhere. It's too loud. I don't like it.
Okay, here we go. So the first battle is going to be the battle of the explosive pop songs, the Immigrant Song versus Pinball Wizard. The second battle is going to be Hard Rocking Headbangers, I Can See for Miles versus Heartbreaker. The third battle will be Punk Rock Power Pop, Communication Breakdown versus My Generation. The fourth battle is the best closing track, Love Reign Over Me versus How Many More Times.
Oh man.
The fifth song is going to be the best instrumental jam, Achilles' Last Stand versus Rael. The sixth one will be the best album opener, Baba O'Reilly versus Good Times, Bad Times. The seventh one is the best ballad, The Song Is Over versus The Rain Song. Number 8 will be the best psychedelic song, Arnamaniva City in the Sky versus Dazed and Confused. Number 9 will be the best epic song, Kashmir versus Who Are You. And then the final battle will be Stairway to Heaven versus Won't Get Fooled Again.
Oh, nice.
Right.
So I will give a date for that stream soon. So be on the lookout for that because we want you guys to participate in that. Anyway, my thoughts on Communication Breakdown. So when I listened to this album, it was in between classes, I believe, at lunchtime in college. I drove to Raising Cane's to get some chicken. I sat in the parking lot while Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You and You Shook Me were playing. And Dazed and Confused. And everything up to like, I Think Your Time Is Gonna Come. And I start driving back. The main riff to this song kicks in, and I almost, like, that would probably be lying saying I almost swerved over, but like something happened when the riff kicked in. I had to look and see what the name of this song was. Like Communication Breakdown. Like, what is this? This is cool. When the riff kicked in, it's like ba-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-ba. And I turned the radio on. I'm like, woo! Like, what's this? Like, this is cool. And then it gets to the chorus where it's just going crazy. Like, communication breakdown. It's always the same. And then you got Robert Plant going like, like doing his vocal gymnastics, and the guitar solo kicks in, and it's just like he's playing up really high on the neck, and then Robert Plant kicks back in, and he's still playing really crazy, and then he does another like, and then there's like overdubs of him going in both of your ears, like, Anyway, this song is epic, and I probably overreacted to it, but I don't care because it's epic.
That's not
That's all I
overreacting.
have to say.
This song is epic. This song is a banger. I love it. It is amazing. It's so good. I would say you're underdoing it. That's like words can't describe how great the song is. I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying that's how great it is. I agree.
Yeah.
It is an amazing track. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of briefly touched upon it in the beginning, but obviously we briefly mentioned that Led Zeppelin were one of the influences of heavy metal, and to me this is the song that kind of shows that, because it has pretty much all the characteristics of heavy metal. I mean, we also already established Led Zeppelin isn't a metal band, but they definitely shaped what would become heavy metal, and
yes,
this has everything.
Yeah,
this has everything. It has, of course, you have the fast-paced drumming and then the guitar riff and crazy solos and Robert Plant going all out. It's just, it's another one of those big standout songs, and this was definitely another big highlight on the album and one of my favorites too. So, and this was also the B-side to Good Times Bad Times. So yeah,
wow,
good one.
Should have been
That's a good single.
Well, their manager Peter Grant, from what I've heard, wanted them to be kind of like a mysterious, mythical kind of band, but hence why they sing about mythology a lot, like the Immigrant Song or like Achilles' Last Stand. He like rarely had them do any interviews. He had them like release very few singles because he wanted it to be like, you don't know anything about Led Zeppelin unless you come to their show. And so like that single is one of very few singles that actually made it out. I know Immigrant Song backed with Hey Hey What Can I Do is another one, and Whole Lot of Love, but those are the only 3 singles I can think of that were released by them.
Yeah. Hey Hey What Can I Do when Communication Breakdown either should have been A-sides or it should have been released as a double A-side singles. But what do I know?
The funny thing is, I had never heard Good Times, Bad Times until listening to the album. I was more familiar with Communication Breakdown. I had heard that on the classic rock stations, but I didn't hear Good Times, Bad Times, the main single, at all. I don't know if that says anything about, I guess, the popularity of Communication Breakdown is stronger in today's times compared to how it was back then, but I knew Communication Breakdown. I didn't know it from the title, but then once I heard the riff and them singing Breakdown, I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard this a couple times. And much like Dazed and Confused, I wouldn't say it's top tier Zeppelin, But as far as what's on the album, it's probably top two. It's definitely one of the more memorable songs. It has a great riff that uh it's like so in your face. It's like, oh wow, okay, this song's gonna stick in my brain because it stands out so good. And I think what I also like about it compared to the other songs on the album, where I think some of the other songs I think drag out a bit too long. This one's only like 2.5 minutes, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It does its job. It's catchy. It's got a great chorus, some great vocal trickery that Garrett was already talking about. And I think it's another banger song on the album.
Mm. The good news about Led Zeppelin is that they rarely go over 10 minutes in their songs. Some bands like Pink Floyd or Rush will have like 15, 25-minute songs. And Led Zeppelin has like maybe 2 songs that go over that. Like I know In My Time of Dying is probably the only one that goes way over. It's like
I think Achilles' Last Stand goes over 10 minutes.
Achilles' Last Stand and In My Time of Dying are probably their longest ones. But other than that, their songs tend to be around 4 to 5 minutes long. Average length.
Yeah.
But there's a song coming up on the album that's like 8 minutes.
Oh yeah, we'll
It's the
get to
last
that
one.
in just a second. We got to get through the other song I don't particularly like first. I Can't Quit You, Baby.
It's an
Yeah.
alright track.
It's
just very mediocre at
from
best.
what
I
I
mean,
have
it's
to
more
say.
it's a more boring version of "You Shook Me," basically.
Yeah, I like it better than You Shook Me, but when you have heard the Coda album, which is I don't consider that like an official studio album. It's more like a rarities thing. The version on that album is so much better than what we got here. Like if we would have got that version, then this album would have been even better. But like I don't know, this version's a lot more boring and isn't as fun as the one on Coda. So in my opinion, the definitive version is the Coda version.
Speaking of Coda, though, I was talking to a Led Zeppelin fan. He's a coworker, and he's a lot older. He's in his 50s, and he grew up with basically grew up not like with the earlier albums, but he was around when the Into the Outdoor came out, Presence came out. The bigger album, not the bigger, but the later albums, and he considers Coda to be an album. I told him I'm like Coda really isn't because John Bonham isn't on it, and he's like, I thought he was on it. I'm like,
No,
no.
he is on it. It's just he died. That it's all previously released, but no, it's all like previously unreleased tracks that they had
Oh,
recorded while he was alive, but
never
they just
thought of
hadn't
that.
released yet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
there was.
there's a whole song called Bonzo's Mantra, recorded at Mantra by it's a John Bonham drum solo.
I was told by one person that it wasn't John Bonham, but
No, it's
clearly I
Bonham.
wasn't
It's just a rarities and unreleased tracks album.
clearly I wasn't getting the right information.
Still better than Presence in my opinion, but
Yeah,
other than Achilles' Last Stand.
yeah, that's like to me the whole album is just them trying. I know they're not trying to, but it just sounds like Rush, but a lot worse.
Yeah. Anyway, the song I Can't Quit You, Baby, much better on Coda. Check that version out because the guitar on that one is a lot better. But
Yeah.
here, it's pretty much. I mean, I guess if you're gonna put like one of your worst songs, the second to last song is kind of a good place to put it because like people are probably checking out at this point, and then have a really good song to end the album to make them like get interested again.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think going back to what you said, this does sound like the lesser version of You Shook Me. And whereas I was in the minority and thought You Shook Me was one of the better songs on the album, this one sounded like deja vu to me and just not near as memorable. Even though I think it's got some good guitar work on it, but if I had to choose between the cover of a blues track with the Led Zeppelin touch, I'll give me You Shook Me any day.
Mm.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Next track though.
Anything else?
Did you say anything, Briar, yet?
I mean, you all pretty much summed it up. I had the same feeling.
Yeah,
That's about all you need to say about it.
it's all right.
It's just there.
Yeah.
At first, for a little bit, I was saying that this album was better than two, but then after listening to You Shook Me and this song, I'm like, is this album better than 2?
Well, in my opinion, I like it better than 2 just because I feel like it has higher highs than 2. Jacob is totally going to disagree with me. I think 2 is going to be one of Jacob's favorite albums.
Yeah,
But I
two
feel
and
like
four.
2 doesn't have any songs I don't like. There's just some that I don't like as much, like the Lemon song. But two is at least a good listen all the way through. This one has a few songs where I'm like, okay, I could have done without that one. But then when you get to the highs of the album, it's like I kind of like Good Times, Bad Times and Communication Breakdown better than Whole Lot of Love and Heartbreaker. Even though, okay, well, Heartbreaker is one of my favorite songs of theirs, but I'd have to think about it. Anyway, we got to get to our final song. How Many More Times?
How many more times? I when I first heard the song, and Garrett could attest to it. I wasn't crazy about it. It was for the longest time I didn't like it because of how long it was, and I just wasn't crazy about it. But we were driving back from a job. It was like 1:30 in the morning because we had to work a 19-hour shift, and
Ooh.
I was driving back, and he played the song, and I was like with the music, and I was like, yeah, and we turned it up to max volume, and I was just jamming out, and I'm like, you know what? I love this track. This track's awesome, much better than I remember, and yeah, I love it. What a perfect way to end off the album.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, another one of those great bass lines to start it off by John Paul Jones. Like, again, I'm a sucker for those. So yeah, that was a great highlight. And the guitar work on here is very good. Again, another great riff on here. And even though this was like 8 minutes long, I think I really like the instrumental middle section where it kind of trails off a little bit. I thought that was very cool. I thought that was very awesome. And yeah, I mean, of course, Robert Plant delivers an incredible scream towards the very ends. How he's just going higher and higher into that, which is very cool. So yeah, this is a great song. It's probably don't want to spoil it, but it's definitely one of my favorite songs on this album and a great way to close it out.
Yeah, I think I'm again in the minority on this one. I did not care for this one near as much as you guys. I love a lot of the production on the song. Like the guitar work is great. The bass line is awesome. It's got a good groove to it, but for me, it's one of those things where it did not need to be 8 minutes long. Like the bridge in the middle. I was listening to this album, I think a little bit. It was a little late at night. I was a little bit on the sleepy side too. I don't know if that helped or anything, but I was like, this is stretching out way too long. I didn't care for the bridge section that much. I think to me it was one of those cases to where if it had like the length of something like Communication Breakdown and had that punch to it, I think it'd be an underrated track from Zeppelin. But to me, I was like, I mean, there's great elements to it, but I didn't like the length. That's all I'm gonna say. It's to me, it's like probably my bottom 3 on the album.
Jacob, I'm very sorry, but I'm gonna have a complete opposite opinion on this song.
All right,
You are very
yeah.
much entitled to think it's the third worst song on the album, but I think this song is absolutely epic, and for me, I think it merits its 8 minute length, just because of how like it's not the same song all the way through. It's like constantly changing and has like all these distinct different sections. Starting out with John Paul Jones's bass at the beginning, that doom 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 doom, and maybe one of the reasons I really liked it before, but one of the things that solidified it that I really like it, and you guys have not gotten to hear this album the way that I have gotten to hear it on my new sound system. This particular copy is very well mastered, and when I put this song on, the second John Paul Jones's bass came on, it blew me away. Like one of the best sounding records I've heard when it got to this song. Like the whole record was amazing, but whenever this song started, it was like that bass was like hypnotic, and then when the guitar came like that with the effect on it, it was like the wind from the speaker was pushing you back. It was like whoa, and then the epic middle section with the drumming was like down And my favorite part of this song is the part where everybody cuts out, other than John Bonham is kind of tapping the hi-hat cymbal open and closed to keep the time. And Robert Plant says, "I've got you in the sight of my gun." But like he scoops up, he's like, "I've got you in the sight of my gun." I can't do it like him, but he like goes up, he's like, ah! And then bow, bow, down, 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 down. I'm like, whoa, this is so epic. Anyway, I'm sorry you didn't like it, Jacob, because I really like this.
I would say I don't. It's more. I would put it in more of like, nah, than anything else. Like I like a lot of aspects to it, but it's the runtime and like
I would
like
say listen to the song whenever you're not sleepy, because the first time I listened to Asia by Steely Dan, which is one of my favorite albums now, I was very sleepy and I didn't like it. But then like the next day, I listened to the other half and I loved it. And I'm like, oh, I need to listen to the first half again, and then I loved it. So some albums like I don't know what it is. Some albums like you don't like it, but you're like, I respect it. Maybe I need to listen to it more. And then you listen to it more, like, oh, okay, now I kind of get it. But
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It's an acquired taste, really.
Pet Sounds by the Beach Boys was like that for me too.
Pet Sounds, Disraeli Gears, which is a record you showed off. I didn't like it at all. I'm gonna be honest. I'm like, this has to be one of the most overrated albums of all time.
It's kind of weird, but it's cool weird.
But then I listened to it the other day and I'm like, this is amazing. So I
love Tales of Brave Ulysses. That song is epic.
Album. Easily.
I would say so far my big music hot take from what I've covered on my channel so far. When we did the Queen, my hot take was that Queen's the Game was my second to least favorite Queen album. Only because
I like that one.
As much as I love the singles, everything else around it was kind of a snooze.
Oh well, I don't know. Don't try Suicide is kind of meh.
That's like the one deep cut I enjoy.
It's funny, but it's what else is on there?
You like don't trust.
Take Your Love in the Night is underrated though.
Oh my god, that's pretty funny. I'm not being making fun of sort of way, but I've trust me, I've had a lot of songs that I like too that people were like,
Jacob, just realize that Nick has a lot of hot takes on this channel as well, so don't be ashamed of your hot takes. Embrace them like Nick.
Right. Sounds good.
Like on my channel, I'm gonna say well, me and Garrett are gonna eventually cover Disraeli Gears. I'm gonna say how much I love Mother's Lament, and I'm gonna get a lot of people looking at me weird, but
all right. Yeah. Let's go into our top 5 songs ranking and dishonorable mention.
Okay, I guess I'll go first. Number 5. I mean, you can't go without this song, Communication Breakdown. Number 4, How Many More Times. Number 3, Dazed and Confused. Number 2, Good Times, Bad Times. And number 1, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. And the dishonorable track, sorry, Jacob, you shook me. That's the dishonorable track. And my score out of 10 is going to be a solid 9 out of 10.
All right, I think I'll go next. All right, so number 5 for me is going to be same with Nick, Communication Breakdown. Number 4, I'm going to go with Dazed and Confused. Number 3, Good Times, Bad Times. Number 2, Babe, I'm Gonna Leave You. And number 1 is going to be How Many More Times. Okay. And for a dishonorable track, I'm going to go with Black Mountain Side. And for a rating, I'm going to give this a 8.5 out of 10.
Fair enough.
All right. Then my top 5, I'm going to go with number 5, Good Times, Bad Times. Number 4, Unpopular Opinion, You Shook Me. Number 3, Your Time Is Gonna Come. Number 2, Communication Breakdown. Number 1, Dazed and Confused. Dishonorable, I'm gonna go with probably the least memorable track on the album, I Can't Quit You Baby. And then overall, I'm gonna give the album a 6 out of 10.
Okay. That's actually pretty good for a first listen. Usually first listen scores are a little bit lower than, well, they're either lower or higher than what you eventually settle in on.
Well, I think after thinking about it, I'm like, there's a lot of stuff I respect on the album. It was their first album. I like how I respect how experimental it is with the meshing of the blues and the kind of psychedelic sound, but it's more like a case where I respect a lot of it, but it's not for me personally. So that's why.
Just
So,
just based on what you said you liked about this album, you're gonna love 2.
All right.
Because everything you liked about this album is kind of the direction they go in with 2.
Can't wait.
yeah. Speaking of that, speak going back to the whole respecting it, but then loving it before Rush's Moving Pictures album. Garrett knows it. I used to not like the album. It was for the most of the time, it was one of my least favorite Rush albums, and then I started to listen more of it. And I'm like, I started to appreciate the subtleties and the differences on it. And speaking of the album ratings always changing, it's true. The only one of the few one of the rare times my rating hasn't changed for better or for worse is Rush's 2112. I thought it was a 10 out of 10 album, and I still think it's a 10 out of 10 album.
Yeah, that's a great album. Nick, what's your top 5?
I already gave mine.
Oh, oops, my turn. Okay. Number 5, Baby, I'm Gonna Leave You. Great song. Kind of gives me vibes of Chicago's 25 or 6 to 4, even though this song came out first. That like descending do 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 do. I don't know, very similar. I feel like you could just add the horn section in, and you'd have an epic mashup, and have like Terry Kath and Jimmy Page playing in the same song. Like that would be epic.
This reminds me of a small Faces song. I feel much better. It's a B-side to a Tin Soldier Man, and there's a part where it's like dun 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 dun. It's almost the opposite of this song. Like it's kind of going up, while Led Zeppelin's kind of going down. So I don't know. It's kind of I always found that interesting.
Sir, there are but 4 small faces.
Yep, that's the album it's on.
Number 4 is going to be Dazed and Confused, epic blues track. Number 3, Communication Breakdown. Love the riff on that one. Number 2, Good Times, Bad Times, the most epic Allow Us to Introduce Ourselves song ever. And number 1 for me is How Many More Times. Dishonorable to Jacob. Dishonorable to You Shook Me. And my score, I would like to give it higher, but because of the 2 bluesy songs, I'm gonna have to give it just a 9.0 out of 10, like just a straight 9 out of 10.
Oh, so we agree with each other with the 9 out of 10.
Yeah,
I want to give it higher, like a 9.5 out of 10.
I know, but the 2 generic bluesy songs just kind of
I know you don't like the Lemon song, but if like the Lemon song and like
I like the first half of the Lemon song, but not the second half.
Because Lemon song's a bluesy song, but they do it perfectly in my opinion. If the Lemon song was on there and like they had like a nice ballad like Thank You on there, the album would be a lot better. Like I noticed that there's really no ballad on this album, which
other than Baby, I'm Gonna Leave You. That's
I mean, it's not really a ballad. I mean, like something like Thank You or Going to California.
Do you know who agreed with you, Nick? George Harrison agreed with you. He said his biggest critique of Led Zeppelin is they didn't do any ballads. Led Zeppelin listened to him and wrote the Rain song.
Yeah, that was my only problem, is that there was like virtually no ballads on this album, and Led Zeppelin 2 had one. Zeppelin 3 had a ton of them, which is why it's one of my
That's
favorites.
the Way is amazing. I love that song.
When I was going through the discography, it was my favorite Led Zeppelin song until I got to In My Time in the Light by from the Physical Graffiti album. But that was my only problem, is that there's like virtually no acoustic numbers. That's another reason why the album dropped in score and not the 2 bluesy tracks.
Yeah, I feel like all the other albums have at least one really prevalent acoustic song. Other than, I guess, Baby, I'm Gonna Leave You is half acoustic.
Yeah.
Anyway, prepare for 2. The next album is going to be very epic. I seriously believe Jacob is going to like 2 a lot better.
2 has a whole lot of love on it.
Yes, and a lot of songs that sound like it as well. Have you ever heard of Heartbreaker?
I don't think I've heard that one. At least it doesn't
Ooh,
sound
you're in
good.
for a treat. It like the guitar goes bow 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 bow
Oh,
ba dow
I
bow bow
like
dow 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 dow
the
dow dow dow.
song 1, 2, 3 Big Bang on it has a Heartbreaker, then right after Live and Love and May, then right after Ramble On. Though
Oh
to me
yeah.
that's
Oh, Ramble On's on the album too.
Yeah. And
Oh,
then
that's a great song as
I have a
well.
feeling that you're really gonna like Bring It On Home on that album. It's the album closer, and it's kind of like the good side of the blues with more harmonica.
it's like
All right.
if You Shook Me was actually a good song.
Yeah.
You're not gonna
I'm
let that
sorry.
one go.
I'm sorry.
I'm the one dude that likes You Shook Me.
Hey,
That's good.
you want to hear something though? Nick says that Sgt. Pepper's is only the 8th best Beatles album. So
Oh wow.
That's mostly because it has some really like uninspired, like not uninspired, like it has good Good Morning, which I can't stand. I mean, for supposedly this big experimental Beatles album, there's not a lot of experimental aspects to it. Like Getting Better is good, but it's not perfect. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because they're the best, so you got to be more harsh on it. You got to for an album that's 8 for the Beatles could be like the best album for an all right band. Like I can't think of it right now, but like for a decent for an all right band, Sergeant Pepper's would be their magnum opus, but for the Beatles, the freaking Beatles, it would just be an all right album. Not all right, but it would just be just a great album.
all right, thank you guys for tuning in to our Led Zeppelin review. We will see you again. I believe we're going to do the Who Sell Out next week, and Jacob, we will see you again next month for Led Zeppelin 2.
All right, can't wait.
Hopefully Jason will be here.